Okay. Child, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Manaba, Iri Barodante. Vijana Manaba. Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Manachade Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Aravidikacharya also tell us to Shima His Divine Grace Abhayat Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Adantakoti, Vaishnava Vrindigajai, Namacharya Shubhavidas Thakur Jai. Friends say, Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Brahma Nityananda Shidwaita Gadata, Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrindigajai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Govardhan Shayam Kunda, Radhaganda Giri Govardhan Kijai, Vrindavanam Kijai, Mathuram Kijai, Jagadada Sami Kijai, Punamai Kijai, Shrimati Galasi Devi Kijai, Samveda Bhakti Vrindi Kijai, Gaur Bhagadananda Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhagavate Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pachani Nirvashesha Shanya Padi Paschatya Deshatarni. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam Canto. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Taditro Nirahang Stambho Mukta Sarva Madar Iha Krishrang Yadrichiyapnoti Tad Ji Tasya Parang Tapaha Ridra Niraham Stambaho Mukta Sarva Madar Iha Krishram Yadrichihapnoti Todhi Tasya Param Tapaha Ridroniraham Stambho Mukta Sarvamadaiha Krishram Yadrichihapnoti Tadhi Tasya Param Tapaka Ridroniraham Vishvam Yadrichiyapnoti Tadhi Tasya Parang Tapaha. Ladies? Alright. Daridraha, a poverty-stricken person. Niraham stambaha is automatically freed from all false prestige. Muktaha, liberated. Sarva, all. Mamahai, from false ego. Iha, in this world. Kritstram, with great difficulty. Yadrichya apnuti, what he gains by chance from providence. Tat, that. He, indeed. Tasya, his. Param, perfect. Tapaha, austerity. Translation: a poverty-stricken man must automatically undergo austerities and penances because he does not have the wealth to possess anything. Thus his false prestige is vanquished. Always in need of food, shelter, and clothing, he must be satisfied with what is obtained by the mercy of providence. Undergoing such compulsory austerities is good for him because this purifies him and completely frees him from false ego. So purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A saintly person voluntarily accepts a state of poverty just to become free from material false prestige. Many great kings left their princely standard of living and went to the forest to practice austerity according to Vedic culture just to become purified. But if one who cannot voluntarily accept such austerity is put into a situation of poverty, he automatically must practice austerity. Austerity is good for everyone because it frees one from material conditions. Therefore, one is very much proud of his material position. Put is the best way to rectify his foolishness. Duridriya dosha guna rashi nasi. When a person is poverty-stricken, naturally his false pride and aristocracy, wealth, education, and beauty is smashed. Thus corrected, he is in the right position for liberation. Nice verse. Scary. Duridro niraham stambo mukta sarva madariha Krisham rajitshi atoti tanditasya param tapaha Somaganatividandasya gananjana shlakaya chakshuram meditam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Okay, so this is a lot to say about this verse. In the beginning of creation, there was one living entity who appeared from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, And that was who? Does anyone know? Who? Lord Brahma. And he came out of the lotus flower, the lotus stem, coming from the navel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And it was all dark. Like in the Bible, it talks about how in the beginning everything was dark and God said, let there be light. So we're going to describe what that light was. So Lord Brahma didn't know what to do, so he went down and tried to figure out things for himself. He couldn't do it. And then he came back and sat on his lotus flower, and then he heard 2 syllables. What were those syllables? Tapa, not Hare Krishna. And so he executed great austerity for a long period of time. And then after that period of time, he was able to see the Lord's abode, and compose the Brahma Samhita. Very interesting. So this principle of tapa, or austerity, or putting yourself in a difficult situation voluntarily, is very important. I mean, even the demons did it. Like Hiranyakashipu, right? He stood on his tippy toes and he executed so much austerity that all of his flesh was gone and all that was left was his bones, and he was living inside the bones. And then of course Lord Brahma came because Hiranyakashipu's fire coming from his head was disturbing the whole universe. So even the demons, they do that. It's interesting. To acquire power, you have to do austerities. To acquire Krishna consciousness, you have to do austerities. And there's a system. Now, lest all of you get scared, because this is Kali Yuga. I mean, actually, Yagyahi Sankirtana Prayar Yajanti Hisamedasa. Actually, that's the austerity we perform, isn't it? Isn't it true? That Kalerda Shinhei Raja Myashriko Mahagunan Kirtan Bir Krishna Mukta Sangha Paramraja. We perform the austerity of Sankirtan, preaching, chanting the Lord's holy names. That's the sacrifice for this age. But there's more to it than that. Because in order for someone to really be fixed in what we call sadhana bhakti. You know sadhana bhakti? Sadhana bhakti means bhakti in practice. There's two understandings. Of course, there's the sadhana bhakti, and within sadhana bhakti you have vaidhi bhakti and raganuga bhakti. You understand? Sadhana means practice, vaidhi means you're practicing just by the rules and regulations, raganuga means you have some taste, or you're doing it spontaneously, and it involves some other things like following in the footsteps of some eternal resident of the spiritual world. I mean, there's more to it than that. I'm not going to elaborate on raganuga bhakti right now. So, in order to be stable in Raganuga Bhakti or Vaidhi Bhakti or Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, then one has to be able to control the mind. And we're going to be all of us are put into many difficult situations. Many, many difficult situations that test our control of the mind. So when one voluntarily undergoes austerity, it helps one later on control the mind when you're put into difficult circumstances. And that's why it is very much recommended that one have basic training. For example, if you join the army, anybody here in the army? Nobody. Or let's say doctor. We have a doctor here. As I say, is there a doctor in the house? So anyway, we have a doctor here. So there's some basic training, it's called residency, where they have to stay awake for like how many hours at a time? Sometimes 48 hours or something, 2 days, 3 days. You know, I think it was, Rubanuga was telling me that in the hospital sometimes, in the early days, there's only 2 doctors for all those rooms and all those patients, and you know, they had to keep their eyes open. Because probably after 48 hours, they couldn't figure out the difference between the kidney and the heart. That's a problem. Problem for the patients. But still, there's that training, that austerity. And in the Vedic system, okay, let's talk about the army, because that's a more appropriate example. In the army, they have something called basic training. We have one of our devotees in our temple of North Carolina who's in the Marines. That's like stricter than the army, because these people are just like tough and rough and ready for anything, and they do survival training. They're thrown into the forest and say, you gotta live, buddy. And there's bugs biting them, and they have to figure out what to eat. And for our devotees, you know, they're vegetarians, so they can't eat the bugs. But the other ones, they eat bugs. They actually eat bugs and lizards and cockroaches and whatever they can get their hands on. So, anyway, so there's this basic training, and this basic training they're taught what? Discipline, isn't it? And so the discipline means they have to listen to the drill sergeant. There's a drill sergeant. I don't know if you have that here in Fiji too, where they march and even if the person smiles, the drill sergeant will yell at them. What are you smiling for, soldier? Wipe that smile off your face. Okay, do 500 push-ups. Okay, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. No, it's tough, you know. And actually, sometimes people commit suicide in basic training. It's actually so heavy. And of course, and later on, when they graduate, even there's heavier training for people who are at least in America, there's these rangers, the Army Rangers. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. Or, you know, I'm not trying to glorify the armed forces, because there's a lot of problems too. But in any case, there's basic training. So when they're put in the battlefield, guess what? They function as a unit. You know, they protect their fellow soldiers. You hear all these heroic stories, or these stories of heroism, where one soldier is wounded and another one he'll go out in spite of the bullets flying overhead, and he'll grab his fellow soldier and take him back to safety. That's heroism, isn't it? So I'm going to equate this with devotion, with devotees in a second. Don't worry, I'm not going to simply talk about heroes, mundane heroes. So, you know, that's heroism, because they have this training. You understand? Tapasa, brahmacharya, samena cha, dhamena cha. Of course, that's Krishna consciousness. So, in the Vedic context, or in the Krishna conscious context, that is also mentioned, that basic training, in the instructions of Prahlad Maharaj. Brahmachari Gurukula Vasan Anta Gurorita Archyan Dasavan Nicho. You know that verse? No, very important verse. The Brahmachari, or in these days, Brahmacharini. That's feminine for Brahmachari. Brahmacharini. Brahmachari Gurukula, they go to the Gurukula. Actually, the word Gurukula doesn't mean school. Sometimes people think Gurukula means school. It means the place of the Guru. It's like Lord Ram. He was born into very wealthy, Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna, right? They were born extremely wealthy family. But at 5, where do they have to go? To the ashram of Vasishtha Muni, right? Everybody was in Ramayana. And then they just had to live along with all the other persons who were not kings. Just like one of the people at the ashram where Lord Ram was living along with his brothers was, and what was his name again? The one who was the lower class guy, who, what's his name again? I forget actually. He was when Ram was actually going to on exile. He met him. What? 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 No. Anyway, he was a Nishadaraj, but what was his name? Gupta. Guha, that's right. Thank you for reminding. So he met Guha, and Guha became his good friend. Isn't that interesting? So here was like a difference between king and this forest guy, and they became good friends. So everyone, it was equalized. Because when you're brought up in a very wealthy family, and basically everything is taken care of for you, you just have to sit and someone feeds you grapes or whatever they feed you. Or lanka. If you're brought up in a very wealthy family, then you become spoiled. It actually spoils the person. You get whatever you want. I mean, it's like, I'll speak more about this in a second, but just like in my childhood, I was brought up in that sort of family. I asked my father, can I have a sports car? And, a few days later, I woke up in the driveway, there was a sports car. Fancy red sports car. So I could drive it and wave to all the girls in the street. I was a rascal. So anyway, but I'll describe my history in a second after I finish this verse. So, Brahmachari Gurukula, and the interesting thing is actually, the problem we had in the ISKCON Gurukulas was due to the fact we didn't set it up the way it was supposed to be set up. Because if you look at the traditional Gurukula, like the one Lord Ram went to, it was like a husband and a wife, a guru and his wife, and they took care of the kids, and they had a family situation. It wasn't that someone would go to a Gurukula run by brahmacharis, other brahmacharis, or brahmacharis, and they would just like force like heavy austerities. I remember sometimes in ISKCON was just like, in the old days we didn't understand how to do the Gurukula system, so they had all the kids in front of the deities, and the brahmacharis would say, dance, dance, and then you'll get your Mahaprasada. It's like training up the dogs, just like, isn't it? They trained up the animals. Sometimes they train up, in America and other places, they train up dolphins or porpoises, and they give them a little fish. And then the poor little boys, I mean, actually, I was one of the teachers, so I know what happened. But I was nice. The poor little boys got so little sleep that they fell asleep eating prashadam. I remember, just watching them eat prashadam, and the nose would just go into the prashadam. But that's not the Gurukula system. The Gurukula system is, yes, they live very simply. However, they still have the affection and love of the guru and his wife, who are able to give them balanced childhood. would say, because otherwise childhood is imbalanced. If you just have some guy it's pretty imbalanced. Very imbalanced. Just like, anyway, I guess I should give the example of this person. There was a previous president of the United States who was brought up in a situation like that. And he's just like nuts. Crazy. Because he was brought up in a boarding school. You know what a boarding school is? You know, it's just nuts. Because he didn't have any mother around or anything like that. Boys need mothers. Girls need mothers too. Anyway, you need balance. Like Prabhupada was brought up in a nice family. He had a mother and a father and loved his mother and father. There's nothing wrong with that. So the guru and the guruini, you know, the wife of the guru, they function as like a surrogate parents, and they're very loving. So it's like they have this toothpaste in India, Rajadanta or something, which means lightning teeth. You ever heard of that before? Bajra Danta. You've heard of that before. You have lightning teeth. You brush your teeth and your teeth is white as lightning. So Danta in this particular case means they learn to become tame, control their senses. Because they're living very simply. You know, sleeping on a mat on the floor. Now that to you may appear to be, ooh, how can you do that to someone? We need a soft bed, right? Soft bed, you know, actually, you know, when I was young I had so many two mattresses. There's that whole story, I don't know if any of you know the story about the princess and the pea. You know the story? Where they had to make 100 mattresses and she still couldn't sleep properly because there was a pea underneath. So that, but they learned to enjoy austerities. Cold shower. You know, all of you here, you live in a hot climate, but still you're turning the hot water on while you're taking a bath in the morning. Sometimes I wonder about that. One time the hot water wasn't working here, and the devotees were just having nervous breakdowns. What are we going to do? How can we take a cold shower? Well, it's 40 degrees outside. Cold shower would be kind of nice, isn't it? But we're so accustomed, you know, you turn on the hot water, the steam is coming out, and the bathroom mirror is completely fogged. I remember as a brahmachari, you shared the same bathroom, and you come into the bathroom after someone else, and you say, the mirror is fogged. And that means there was hot water used in the shower. You're in Maya. The other Brahma said, Maya, 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 Maya. Hot shower. Sense gratification. It's interesting history. So anyway, Vasantanta, they learn to control the senses, you know, austerity. Simple that no one's going to get hurt by lying on a mat on the floor. I did that. I didn't get hurt. I'm still around. It was healthy. Actually, it's healthier than a mattress. A mattress, sometimes your back is bending in all sorts of ways. Actually, even recently, when I was at Govardhan during the summer, I slept on the floor without a mat because it was so hot. You know, concrete floors are cooling when it's 50 degrees out. It was so hot, you could cook just by putting something in the sun. You didn't need an oven. You didn't want to cook. It was so hot. And I was able to do that. Why? Because of that brahmachari training. So Vasandanta, and then even more important, Gurur Hitam. That means working for the benefit of the Guru. You're taught that yes, Guru Maharaj is boss. And of course he's connected to Krishna, so ultimately you're working for the benefit of Krishna, you know, Gauriyam. And then Archyan, Dasavan, Nicho. I mean, Then you learn to good manners, good behavior. Prachar, achar, Achar means like behavior. Yad acharati shreshtas tatat evetarojanaha. And Brahmachari Guru Pure Basandata Dasavan. You learn Dasavan, that's really important. Dasavan means you become full of service. You learn you're a servant. Like the first, I'll get into my history in a second. And then I'm just going philosophical first. So you're ready to do anything the Guru says, fetch firewood. He said, like Sandapana Muni, he said to Krishna, right? And Sudama Brahman, go to the forest and fetch firewood. Okay, yes, Guru Maharaj. That's Krishna, he's God. Even he had to undergo austerities. So he goes to the forest, fetches firewood, and they get caught in the night. You all know that story. But Krishna was just serving his spiritual master in such a way, setting that example at the ashram. Of course, Krishna only had to spend 64 days in his ashram, in the ashram of the spiritual master. Because he was such a good student, he learned all the arts in 64 days. Pretty good. Each day he learned something different, right? He learned the art of makeup, and one day he actually learned these things. Or learn the art of talking in different languages another day. So if you can do that, you only have to spend 64 days in the ashram of the spiritual master. So anyway, Dasavan Nicho. And then he learns that the Guru is actually his friend. Because the Guru was doing this for his own benefit. The Guru was putting the devotee in those circumstances for his own benefit. And then later on, he can do so many things and undergo so many austerities in Krishna's service. I'll tell some stories from I tell about my personal story. There's an interesting story, several interesting stories in the Mahabharata about the Guru training the disciple. Okay, here's a funny story. The Guru, once upon a time, one Guru had a disciple who was, I want to put it politely, horizontally challenged. Just try to understand what that means. It's big. So, I don't want to use the F word. So he was horizontally challenged. So the Guru wanted to train the disciple not to eat too much. So he said to the disciple, all right, just go out and take care of the cows. And he thought, little exercise, he'll do pretty well. Because one of the ideas in the ashram of the spiritual master is one doesn't take prasadam unless the spiritual master calls you to take prasadam. So he goes out, and he comes back after a few days, and he's, let's say, horizontally more challenged. And the Guru says, what are you eating? And he says to the Guru, well, I'm out there, so I'm begging, Madhukari. I'm begging and getting food and enjoying life. The Guru says, no. You have to offer everything to your Guru first. He says, yes, Guru Maharaj. Boy, this Guru is really heavy with me. So anyway, he's thinking. So he goes out. Same thing happens. He comes back, and this still hasn't lost any weight. And there's a story from the Mahabharata. And the Guru says, what are you doing? And he says, I'm begging from everybody, and I'm offering everything to you, but then I beg again for myself the second time. And then the Guru says, no, every time you beg for me, give me. And then, not that the Guru wants anything, he's just trying to help the guy control his senses. So then, same thing happens, no change in this guy. The Guru says, what are you doing now? He said, I'm milking the cows, I'm drinking a lot of milk, Guru said, The milk is meant for the calves, you rascal. Yes, Guru Maharaj. Okay. The guy is learning how to control his mind. He actually is. You may think this guru is extremely cruel, but it's good for the person. So he goes out again, and still the same problem. And the guru says, what are you eating now? And he says, well, when the calves are drinking the milk from their mother, from the cow, they leave some froth over. So I just go around when the calves are drinking. I guess he has trouble with this, controlling the tongue or something like that. I mean, that's really bad. The guru said, no, the calves are just being merciful. They need all the milk. Don't do that. All right, Guru Maharaj. All right, so he's just like, poor guy, you know. I feel sorry for him. So there, he goes out again, and he disappears. The guru doesn't see him. He said, what happened? What happened with my dear disciple? So they go out looking for him, and they find that he was so hungry, he just saw the leaves on the trees and just like threw them in his mouth. Sometimes it's like that, isn't it? You get so hungry, you just want to bite on a tree or something like that. So, but these leaves were poisonous. So he became blinded, and he fell in a well. So the disciples go out, they tell Guru Maharaj that so-and-so has fallen into a well, and he's blind. And Guru Maharaj doesn't say, get him out of the well. He says, he goes there to this disciple and says, okay, pray to the Ashvini Kumaras. And the Ashvini Kumaras will actually help you. Okay, so he prays. The Ashvini Kumaras are the two demigods, twins, who are into medical science. So he prays to them, and they come down from the heavenly planets, and they give this person, for a long time, but they give this person a little cake and say, here's a cake, you eat this, it will solve your blindness. But by this time he's understood. He said, no, I cannot eat anything without my guru's permission. He's trained up now. So as soon as he says that, they bless him, he gets his eyesight back. And he's happy, and the guru blesses him, and the guru allows him to get married then. Because no one could be a good grahastha unless they actually have that sort of training. Because that training is essential for everyone later on in life. One other story from the Mahabharata. Another story from the Mahabharata is the guru sent his disciple out one time. He said, look, make sure that the irrigation ditches are proper. There's no water getting out of the irrigation ditches are proper. So this disciple doesn't come back. And the guru goes out with his disciple, and he finds out that the disciple has seen that one of the irrigation ditches has a big hole in it, so he laid down in the ditch to plug the hole because he was so dedicated to his guru's instruction. Wow. So, how many of you are so dedicated? I don't believe it. So anyway, and then this person's allowed to get married. Just this is tradition. Like 99.99% of the people, they're trained up, and then they're allowed to get married, and then they're grahastas who can be perfect in their Krishna consciousness and preach. And, a rare person will take sannyas. So, getting back to my experience, I thought I had a class with this, it was interesting. That I came from a very wealthy family, we had airplanes and all sorts of things like that. And used to waking up early in the morning. To me, 4 o'clock in the morning was an ungodly hour. because I was a university student before, and university students, they basically go to sleep at 7 o'clock in the morning. Not all. We have some good ones here. They're not used to waking up early like that. I mean, when I get up, when I'm preaching, and like even at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, people are just ending the party. It's like here in Fiji too. I'm sure it's the same in Fiji. So here I was, just accustomed to living like the princess and the pig, and then how am I going to join that movement? Wake up early in the morning, sleep on the floor with 30 other men in the same room, share clothes with 30 other men. Sometimes it was hard to find matching socks because everybody had to wash all their clothes together, and then just had one bin with socks, another bin with dhotis, another bin with shirts, and you were lucky if anything fit. Here, I remember putting on one shirt and it ripped because it was just like his style. His size shirt. Another time, the shirt was like so big, it was like pajamas. And the socks, red sock and purple sock. And all we were allowed to have is one box of belongings. And the women too, same thing. Same thing, You ladies, when you go somewhere, you need a whole moving van to transport yourself. Sometimes we have these trips to India. I used to conduct trips to India with ladies. I have the people on the bus were ladies, and their husbands had to. Okay, 1 minute. Their husbands had to carry, like the Indian coolies on their head, these giant boxes. I guess we have to end. I mean, it's such an interesting subject matter. Anyway, I'll continue speaking about, okay, I guess he's the boss. So, all glory to the divine grace. Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Jai Radha Bihari. Jala Vigrasya Govinda Jai Sitaram Lakshmana. Vajamin Well, as long as it's not too many, we don't want to have. What's that?
Most of them having it in the.
Yeah, let them have it
How about
here.
your disciples from overseas?
Yeah, they can come, but we don't want big crowds. What? Why?